Hi everyone, welcome to my channel Crayon Learn Teach. Today we're going to be looking at different activities that you can do with your kids to help develop their phonemic awareness. So if you think that's something that you'll find useful, then keep on watching. So before we get looking at the different activities that you can do with your kids to help develop phonemic awareness, we're first of all going to have a little reminder of what phonemic awareness actually is. So phonemic awareness is when your children can hear and manipulate the sounds in words. So they can manipulate things like the beginning sounds, middle sounds, the end sounds. They can actually hear all the individual sounds as well, and it means that they're really aware of all the different sounds that they can hear in their words. And usually when they have a good level of phonemic awareness as well as phonological awareness, they're ready to go on to learn phonics and how to read. So you might have heard me mention phonics there and be wondering, how does phonics link with phonemic awareness? So as I said before, phonemic awareness is very much looking at the different sounds in words and sort of really, like, your kids will be working more verbally with the words, so it's all more what they can hear in the words, whereas phonics is when the children start to make the connection between what the sounds they can hear and then the written letter. So they know they're starting to learn what letters represent what sound and how to put these sounds together and how to write the sounds together to make different words. So phonemic awareness is looking purely at the verbal side of things and just what they can hear and things, and then the phonics is when they start to make the link between what they can hear and the written letter or the written sounds. So phonemic awareness covers 7 different skills. So the first kind of area of skills you'll be looking at would be phonological awareness, and phonological awareness is kind of encompasses a few different things as well. So if you're looking at phonological awareness with your kids, you'll be exploring things like syllables, initial, beginning and end sounds, looking at rhyming words, looking at alliteration, and just asking your children to really play around with the sounds. And again, as I mentioned before, a lot of this is done verbally, and you can do it through games and through singing and things like that. Obviously, you can also do it written as well if your children are at that level. Just depends on where your kids are in their learning. And throughout this video, I'm actually going to be showing you some different activities that you can do, both verbal activities and some written activities for each of the different skills that I'm going to mention for phonemic awareness. But phonological awareness links in really well with phonemic awareness, and as I said, it covers things like I mentioned earlier, like syllables, onset and rhyme, rhyming words, alliteration, beginning sounds and things like that. If you want to learn a little bit more about phonological awareness, I've actually written a blog post all about your children being ready to read, and I'm going to link it in the description below if you wanted to read about that a little bit more. So next, we've got a couple of little activities that look at rhyming words. So this helps with the phonological awareness part of what I was talking about earlier. So this activity here, obviously your children don't need to read really anything. Obviously you would probably read the instructions to your child, and all your children need to do is they have to colour in all the rhyming words, so all the words that end in at. So here we can see we've coloured in the cat, the bat, and the seat to represent the word sat, the mat and the hat. So this activity is really good for the children that aren't quite really looking at the letters yet that represent the sounds. The couple of activities that I might be sharing later on, they kind of use a lot more of the phonics, the sounds, so your children will probably be looking at the letters. But here, your children can definitely do this activity even though they haven't learned the letters yet for each of the sounds. And then if your children are kind of on to starting to explore the different sounds and the words, this is a little book that they could make, which is looking at book of at words. So obviously this can be done with any word family, with any set of rhyming words, and your children can actually cut out and make up this little flip book which goes through all the different words in the at family. And this is really good for your children so that they can learn. Once they've made it, they can flip through it whenever they have a little bit of spare time, and they can just sit and look at all the different words that are in the same word family. If you have some kids in your class that you're not quite sure if they're ready to learn how to read yet, and if you're not quite sure if they're ready to move on to maybe learning phonics yet, I've actually got a free downloadable pack that looks at phonological awareness and helps you assess where your kids are with their phonological awareness. So in the pack includes lots of different activities that looks at some of the things that I mentioned, like syllables, alliteration, rhyming words, things like that. I also have a lot of posters and things included in there that look a lot at rhyming words and things. So if you'd like to download that for free, I'll leave the link in the description below for that as well. So on to the next skill for phonemic awareness. So the next skill that we're going to look at is isolating sounds. So this could be picking out the beginning sound, the middle sound and the end sounds. And again, there's lots of different activities that you can do for this. One of the really simple ones is playing I Spy with your children. So you can ask them, I spy something beginning with, and then get them to pick out something that begins with that sound. A little bit of a twist you could do here is you can tweak it a little bit and ask them to I spy something that ends in a sound. So then they're not just looking at beginning sounds, they're looking at end sounds, and you can also do this with middle sounds as well. Now, if you wanted to take this a bit further and start looking at written words, if your children are maybe not quite ready for phonics, or they are maybe just starting to look at phonics but they're still needing to work on their phonological awareness, you could easily do this activity by putting different CVC words or even pictures on cards, spread them out onto the table or spread them out on a surface, and ask your children to find me the picture beginning with, and then give them a sound, or find me the word beginning with and give them the sound if they're looking at the written letters and starting to look at phonics. And again, you can tweak those activities around a little bit and ask your children to find you the picture or the word with a certain middle sound or with a certain end sound. So then they're really using, they're isolating the sounds, and they're getting a lot of practice at doing this. So here we have an example of an activity that's isolating sounds, and this specific activity looks at beginning sounds. So all your children would need to do would be to look at each individual picture, and then they have to colour in the beginning sound that they can hear at the start of the word to show their answer. So this activity is really simple. If you want this exact activity, it's actually available on my Teachers Pay Teachers store, which is also called Crayon Lane Teach, but obviously you can source it from elsewhere or you can make your own as well. So this activity also looks at isolating sounds, but this activity specifically looks at middle sounds in a word. So here, it's not colouring in the sound to show your answer, you're actually looking at the picture, figuring out what middle sound is missing, and then your child has to write in the answer in the box that they're given. So here I've actually made this little owl slider so that the children can slide through the different vowels to figure out what middle sound is missing from the word. So this is another little activity that they could do where we're looking at isolating sounds. So the next skill that we're going to look at for phonemic awareness is blending. So blending sounds together. So this would probably, you wouldn't actually need to be looking at phonics yet to get your children to be looking at this. So this can totally be done verbally as well. So a lot of the time I'll maybe say 3 sounds or even just 2 sounds to a child, a and t, and I'll verbally say it and then encourage them to lengthen the sounds out and to blend the sounds together. And then you can then make that a little bit trickier by obviously doing CVC words. You can give them 3 sounds to blend together, and again this can be done totally without writing the sounds down. They could all be done just discussion and talking to your child and getting your child to repeat the sounds back to you and then to try and blend them together. Obviously if your child is at the point where they've learnt a little bit of phonics, they know some of their sounds but they're still working on their phonemic awareness, you can write the sounds down and do like what we would normally do, where you would point to each sound, ask them to say the sound, and then begin to show them and model how you would blend the sounds together. Now something that I do that I've found really works for my kids, especially when they find it tricky, is I start off just by blending 2 sounds together, even if it just makes nonsense words, just to get them used to putting more than 1 sound together. And then when they're at the stage where they're just about ready to start blending and making CVC words, we'll still look at the 2 sounds together, and then I'll miss out the end sound and I'll ask them to say the first 2 sounds together, usually modelled by me, and then they can put the end sound on, just so it's not too overwhelming for them if they're just at the point where they're just learning or looking at CVC words. And I found that really helps develop their confidence as well, because they feel like they're the one that's read the word, and then obviously when they're ready to blend all 3 sounds together, then they can do that. And again, there's loads of different activities that you can do. Obviously there's things like just showing them words and using things like flashcards, asking them to blend the words, but there's also lots of different matching games, there's lots of different on-set and rhyme activities as well. So if you're exploring blending when you're looking at phonemic awareness, then little activities like this where you're asking your children to maybe read the words, blending the sounds together, and I would start off with CVC words like we have here. Now all of these words just look at the at word family. Obviously you can look at any word family you want, or you could mix them up just to make it a little bit more challenging. And in this activity your children have to read the word, they have to colour the correct picture, and then they can practice writing them out. So a really good activity would be an activity like this. As I said, you could even make something similar yourself, where the child has to maybe read the word and then draw the picture that they've read, or read the word and then colour the picture, or if you've maybe got a couple of different flashcards with different pictures on it, they can read the word and then they can pick out the correct picture. So there's lots of different variations that you can do where they're practicing their blending skills. And this is another activity where your children can practice their blending skills, and it also kind of explores onset and rhyme as well. So here I've just made some little jigsaw pieces with the different letters on them, and your children can practice putting them together to make different words. So here they can make, as I said, different words in the at family. Obviously you don't have to stick to this word family, you can mix it up, you can look at a different word family, and then once they've made all the different words, I'd be asking the children to then blend the words and then read out what they've put together. And then once they've made all their different words, they can actually record them on a recording sheet here, or they could even draw pictures of what they've made with the jigsaw pieces to really show that they understand what word they've made, and it just shows a little bit of reading comprehension as well. So the next skill that we're going to look at for phonemic awareness is segmenting things. So you can segment the sounds in a word, but you can also look at segmenting words in a sentence as well. So looking at words first, you could give a child a word. Again, you could do this verbally first, say a word, and then ask them to obviously break the sound up, segment the word up into the different sounds. So I would usually start off with maybe CVC words. If this is maybe a bit too tricky for the children that you're working with, you can always put it just to 2-letter words, very short words like at or it, things like that. And then you can start off with using your fingers, asking them to break the word up using their fingers. But you could also use things like counters and loose parts and get them to actually physically pick out maybe a cube or a counter to represent each sound that they hear. So as I mentioned before, a really good activity if you're looking at segmenting words into sounds is you can put out a word. So I've just used the jigsaw pieces that I used earlier. You could either have a bit of paper just with the word written out, or you could even have a little flashcard with words on them. And then I would just ask the children to segment the word into the individual sounds, and they could maybe use things like cubes, or they could even use things like loose parts to represent each individual sound in the word, so that you can see that they're breaking the word up into the individual sounds. So once I would model it first. Once you've shown them how to do it, they can have a go at doing it themselves, and then they'd be able to count. There's 1, 2, 3 sounds in the word sat. So a lot of the time when you're doing this with your children and you're segmenting words, they might be missing out the middle sound in the word, but that's okay. They can obviously hear the beginning sound, you'll usually hear the end sound as well, and they might need a little bit of support to really stretch the word out so that they can hear the middle sound as well. So as I said, you can represent the different sounds by using things like cubes or counters or loose parts, and it's very hands-on, which is really good to hopefully help them remember. And you can also do this same activity with segmenting sentences as well. So you can give your child a sentence or look at different sentences and ask your children to break the sentence up into the different words that they hear. And again, they can use different things to represent the words. You can use loose parts, maybe some cubes, counters, even their fingers, just so that they can really hear the different words in the sentence and break it up. So the next skill that we're going to look at for phonemic awareness is deleting sounds. So this is really good when you're starting to look at manipulating words, again with a little bit of onset and rhyme as well. So it would where you'd be looking at a word as in maybe the word cat, keeping it quite simple, and if you maybe say to them, right, take away the beginning sound, the k, what word do we have left? So this is really good again for helping them isolate the sound, so they're having to pick out, are you talking about the beginning sound, are we talking about taking away the end sound? So they're using a bit of the isolating sound skill as well, and then they have to take it away, and then they obviously have to tell you what the new word is. And this can be done again totally verbally, but obviously it can be done written down as well. A really good way to do this would be using the magnetic letters and the magnet boards. So you could ask your child to make the word first, so maybe make the word cat, then ask them, right, take away the k, and then say, like, what do we have left? So then they can actually sound it out. But as I said, it can be done totally verbally as well if your children aren't quite ready to be using the written sound yet. And then it doesn't just have to be the beginning sound. It could be, if you're looking at maybe longer words, it could be the second sound. So for the example, if we're looking at the word trip, you might ask them, right, take away the r, so to take that away, and then they've obviously to figure out what the word says with the sounds that we've got left. So the next skill that we're going to look at for phonemic awareness is the opposite of what we just said with deleting sounds, and it's adding sounds in. So here you maybe give your child a short word, as in the word at, and you'd ask them to add in the k to the beginning of the word and ask, what is the new word that we've come up with. And this skill just really lets your children play around with the sounds, manipulate the sounds, and just get used to the sounds. So the last skill that we're going to look at for phonemic awareness is substituting sounds. So it's a combination of deleting a sound and adding a sound. So instead of that being two separate skills, you're looking at substituting the sounds, so doing that all in one go. So this is where we'd be looking at things like word families for onset and rhyme, and you'd be exploring all the different words that you can come up with all the different beginning sounds that have the same ending to the word. So here you would ask your child, okay, we've got the word bat, can we change the b at the beginning to a k? What new word do we have? And then usually what I do is, after I've kind of modelled it for my child, is I would ask them to then come up with lots of different words with the same ending but changing the beginning sound. Now, a really good way to do this is, again, as I mentioned before, is to use the magnetic boards that you might have in school with all the different letters on them. Ask them to make the first word that you're going to be looking at, so for example the word bat, and then I would actually ask them just to play around with the different beginning sounds. So say that we're going to keep the ending to the same, the at the end, and we're going to take away the beginning sound and then try lots of different beginning sounds, and then just see how many words you can come up with, and obviously think about, is it a real word, is it a nonsense word, and get them to really just play around with the words as well. Now, if your children aren't quite ready for using the magnetic board and using the letters, if they've not really explored phonics yet, if you're doing this still verbally, you can easily do this verbally as well. So you would just ask your child, just change the beginning sound to a different beginning sound, and just ask them, what new word does that make? So a really good thing to look at if you're trying to develop your children's substitution skills when you're looking at phonemic awareness is looking at onset and rhyme. So here I've got two different little flap books that I've made with my children, and all they need to do in this one is they're actually given a picture of a word in the word family, and obviously they're given the ending to the word, and they have to write in the beginning sound. So here they can figure out that the beginning sound, looking at the picture, is a k for cat. And then they would basically just flip through and then write in the beginning sound for each of the pictures. And then once they've completed the booklet, they've got another little flap book, so we need to write in a b for bat here. They've got another little book that they can flip through if they want to remind themselves of all the words in this word family. And then we've also got this one here, which is a bit more straightforward, where the children are actually given the beginning sound and then the ending, and they just basically put it together, cut it out, stick it together, colour it in, and then they can flip through. And then what I usually do, the way that I use it in my class, is I ask my kids to keep them in their trays, and then whenever they have a little bit of a spare moment, I say, right, go and get your flat book, and then I ask them to flip through and then read all the different words to me, so that they're practicing substituting the beginning sounds with different sounds to make new words. So that's us covered all the 7 skills that we're going to look at today for phonemic awareness. I really hope that you found the different activity ideas helpful, and I really hope that you found different ways to introduce it to your children helpful as well. If you have found this video useful, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you think you would like to see more videos like this in the future, then please subscribe. And don't forget, if you'd like a free copy of my Phonological Awareness pack, you can just click the link below in the description to grab your free download of that. And if you think that you like the look of any of the resources that I've used in this video as well, I'll leave the links for everything below as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.